Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. This is a 1940 American history textbook from a Catholic school before World War II, and we're almost at the end of it, really very close. Here we are, Chapter 12, Great Leaders of Modern Times, being 1940, Theodore Roosevelt, a forceful leader. An active young man. Another great leader of recent times was Theodore Roosevelt, who came from an old, rich New York family. As a boy, young Teddy was not very strong. His father, therefore, built him a gymnasium, and young Roosevelt exercised day after day. His strength increased, and he entered Harvard University. By the time he had finished the first year of college, he was able to take part in many forms of athletics. Young Teddy became a clever lightweight boxer and a powerful wrestler. Although his sight was poor, he became fairly good shot with a rifle and a shotgun. Theodore Roosevelt was graduated from Harvard in 1880. That same fall, he joined the Republican political club in New York. His mind naturally turned to politics. He was interested in government. Illness, however, interfered with his plan. Roosevelt decided to leave New York for the time and go west, in search of health and adventure. Chimney Butte Ranch. The place Roosevelt selected was a town in North Dakota. This town, according to cowboy visitors, had a population of 11, counting the chickens. This town, according to the cowboy visitors, had a population of 11, counting the chickens, when they're all in town. Roosevelt, at first, was not the favorite with his new neighbors. He came from the city and was so promptly called a tenderfoot. A tenderfoot is a person who has just come to the West. Roosevelt soon won the respect of the ranchers. His bravery on the buffalo hunt, his ability to withstand the hardships of camping out, soon won the admiration of the cowboys. One of the guides said to Roosevelt, "As handy as a pocket in the vest." Roosevelt was. The return to public life. Theodore Roosevelt returned to the East thoroughly strengthened in body. His mind had been made keener. His sympathies had been broadened by the Western experience. He entered the political life again and held a number of offices in New York and Washington. While Roosevelt was in Washington, the United States went to war with Spain, the Spanish-American War. Reasons for the war. Notice the map on page 468, next page, that the island of Cuba is a short distance from our own state of Florida. Since the time of Columbus, Cuba had belonged to Spain. The Cubans now wanted to be independent. Several times they had tried to break away from Spanish rule. William McKinley was president of the United States when the new revolution broke out in Cuba. Some of the American newspapers became very much excited. They demanded that Americans help the Cubans. They demanded also that we protect the Americans living in Cuba. These papers claimed that Americans' lives were in danger by the revolution, and that America who had property in Cuba would lose it. Americans who had property in Cuba would lose it. The Maine disaster. The United States battleship Maine was sent to Havana Harbor. The visit of the battleship was made in a friendly spirit. Unfortunately, on the night of February 15th, 1898, an explosion took place either inside or outside the warship. It sent Maine into the bottom of the sea. The lives of 260 men were lost. The Spaniards were blamed for the disaster. It has never been proven that they were actually guilty. The American newspapers printed exciting stories. The Americans were aroused to a fighting mood. "Remember the Maine," claimed the war cry. became the war cry. Within a short time, the United States was at war with Spain. Oh, wow. That could have been well, I'm not going to even say it. Dewey at Manila. The first victory took place in the Philippine Islands in the Pacific Ocean. These islands, as shown on the map, are far across the Pacific Ocean. Admiral George Dewey, a gallant American commander, sailed his fleet into Manila Bay. He destroyed the Spanish fleet and captured the city of Manila. The power of Spain in the Philippines was broken forever by the victory. This island, with their millions of Catholic natives, were taken to the United States. Our government made an agreement with the Philippines in 1934. Under the agreement, the island would become completely free in 10 years. The Cuban Campaign. Meanwhile, American troops were active in Cuba. The newspapers reported everything they did. Their greatest favorites were Rough Riders and the Colonel Theodore Roosevelt. And the Colonel Theodore Roosevelt. These men were volunteers. The volunteers are the men who enter the army by their own free will. Volunteers in this troop were miners, cowboys, Indians, and some young fellows from the East. Rough Riders took part in the fight at San Juan. Ships off the coast of The Rough Riders took part in the fight at San Juan Hill in Cuba. The American Navy destroyed Spain's best ships off the coast of Santiago. The war was soon over. Cuba was free, and once great power of Spain in the New World was no more. At one time, Spain had owned the greater part of the New World. Now she had a single colony left. She had not a single colony left in the Western Hemisphere. Let's just end it there for today. God bless, and please subscribe if you made it this far. Let's carry on tomorrow.